Oh, well, hey, once again, welcome, and thank you for joining us at Terra Nova from wherever you're joining us from today as we are kicking off the Christmas season and this Christmas series, God on Film, Christmas Edition 2, where we're going to be talking over the next few weeks about three great Christmas movies, pulling themes and ideas from them that I think are oh so relevant to Christmas in 2020. And speaking of Christmas in 2020, we want you to be the first to know that we will be celebrating Christmas. We've got two Christmas Eve services. Actually, we're going to be outdoors and online. Two services on Christmas Eve at 3:30 and 5 p.m. The 3:30 service will have kids programming all the way through sixth grade, and then a 6 p.m. Or 5 p.m. service as well. Outdoors, all of them family-friendly services. And because they're outdoors, they may or may not, it's Southern California, but they may be bundle up services. And we're going to go all out to make them super special and super comfortable. We've got hand warmers ordered. We've got a bunch of new blankets. We've got extra blankets for you. You'll want to bring your own beach chair, but we'll have chairs. And of course, we will have hot coffee, hot tea, hot cocoa, and hot wassail. And if you've not had Terra Nova wassail, you got to try that out. And we're going to be singing great Christmas songs and telling the Christmas story. And of course, ending with just a wonderful candlelight time of worship. And it's going to be, I'll make this promise to you, it's going to be a Christmas to remember. And then we're also going to be creating an online Christmas experience as well for those who just cannot, for whatever reason, make it out here on Christmas Eve. And we are actually going to be putting together some Christmas online celebration kits for you and for those who are watching with you. We encourage you to gather the family around the TV and watch together on Christmas Eve. And so all that's coming up. But today we're kicking off God on Film with this Christmas classic, How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Of course, it is the well-known Dr. Seuss book made into movies a number of different times. My personal favorite is the Jim Carrey version of How the Grinch Stole Christmas. It's the story of a young boy growing up in Whoville who didn't fit in. He did not belong. He wasn't like anyone else. And because of that, he's rejected, he's bullied, he's an outcast. Eventually, he runs away, and he turns all of that hurt and pain into self-pity and resentment and bitterness, and his heart just shrivels up and grows hard until he hated the Who's, and he hated Christmas, and he decides he is going to stop Christmas from coming. He is going to steal Christmas from the Who's. And I just thought, how appropriate for 2020 is that? I mean, the pandemic and lockdowns and quarantining and the elections and racial tension and national division and family divisions and the economy and job uncertainty and fires and power outages. I mean, it all seems to threaten and conspire to steal Christmas from us. And then somewhere, I think, in the middle of all that, our hearts can begin to shrink a little bit. Our hearts can begin to shrink a little bit, and we can become a little more fearful, a little more anxious, a little more angry, a little more resentful and bitter towards those people who aren't doing what we think everybody should be doing or should not be doing, a little more cynical, a little more self-protective, a little less grateful, a little less generous, a little less joyful, a little less connected, a little less worshipful. And our hearts can actually shrink a little bit. And of course, you know how the story, how the Grinch ends, right? After he's stolen everything that he knows will make the Who's happy, he hears them singing on Christmas morning, and he's confused, and he puzzled till his puzzler was sore. And then he realizes that Christmas perhaps is a little bit more. And then this happens.
Max! Help me! I'm feeling...
And what happened then? Well, in Whoville, they say that the Grinch's small heart grew 3 sizes that day.
The Grinch's heart grew 3 sizes in one day. And so today, I actually want to open up the scriptures and learn in very concrete terms, I think in very practical terms for us, how we can actually grow our hearts this Christmas. And today, I want to start us off by talking about what I think is one of the ugliest words in the English language, this word right here, ungrateful. Ungrateful. And of course, nobody wants to be ungrateful. This is ugly. And honestly, nobody thinks that they are. Ungrateful is almost impossible to see in the mirror. Ungrateful is impossible to see in ourselves. And in fact, I was thinking about this week because over the years in counseling and talking with people, praying with people, helping them work through things, I've had people admit all kinds of things to me. I've had people come to all kinds of realizations in conversations that I've had with them. And I thought, you know what? Never, ever has anyone sat across from me in marriage counseling or whatever kind of conversations and come to the realization or admit it out loud, you know what? I think I might be ungrateful. I think I'm ungrateful. It doesn't happen, but you see it in other people, don't you? You see it in other people all the time. In fact, you might be sitting next to that person right now, and you're thinking, I am so glad they're here. I'm so glad they're watching. In fact, you might want to pause right now and go get them to watch this with you, and that is fine. I will wait. But you should know that as you go get them, they might be sitting next to you thinking the same thing about you because this is almost impossible to see in ourselves. And the reason why all of this is important is because ingratitude shrinks our hearts, as we're going to see today. Ingratitude shrinks our hearts. It creates entitlement. It creates discontentment. It's actually associated and linked to depression, and it drives an unseen wedge into the middle of some of our closest, most important relationships, and we don't even know it. We don't even know it because we cannot see it in ourselves. And so to get at this, I want to take a look at a story from Jesus' life that is found in Luke's account of Jesus' life. Luke chapter 17, if you have your Bible, I invite you to open to it, or you can pull out your app. You can follow along on your app as well. And this story takes place in a transitional time in Jesus' life when he is on his way to Jerusalem, where he has already told his disciples he's going to die, and he knows it. He's on his way to Jerusalem, and Luke says he was traveling along the border between Samaria and Galilee, and as he was going into a village, 10 men with leprosy met him. Now, leprosy was one of the most feared diseases in the ancient world. Many cultures and places in the world today, they use that word to refer to a whole host of skin diseases, most of which were not contagious. We use that word to refer specifically to something that was included for them in that, something called Hansen's disease, which is actually a nerve disease, not a skin disease. But in ancient cultures, people with these diseases were quarantined. There's a 2020 word for you. They were quarantined. You get diagnosed with this or you get these things, you start to see things, and you immediately became an outcast. It's like getting tested positive with COVID, right? You were immediately an outcast. You were pushed out of your community, out of your village, out of your home, out of your family. The only people really you could live with was other people who were lepers, and people would avoid you. I mean, this was social distancing on a whole other level. In fact, in many cultures, people had to ring a bell when anyone came near them just to let them know that they were unclean. And so Jesus is passing through this border area, and these guys, I find this fascinating, they recognize him. They know who he is. They recognize him, and they begin calling out from a safe distance, from a safe social distance. They're standing pretty far back, and they're saying, Jesus, Master, have mercy on us. Have mercy on us. And when Jesus saw them, he, I imagine, calls back to them, still from a distance. He calls back to them, go, show yourselves to the priests. And I guess that's all he says. Go, show yourselves to the priests. And as he says this, there are a couple of things happening at once in the story. First of all, according to their law, if a person had leprosy but thought that they might be cleansed now, or they might be clean, or they might be healed, the path to reintegration into their families and their homes, the path to getting their lives back went through the local priest. And they would go to the priest, they would offer a certain sacrifice, and the priest would check them out. And if the priest determined they were clean, they got to go home again. They got their lives back again. And so Jesus says, go, show yourselves to the priests. And though nothing had happened yet, apparently Jesus' words require them to do something I think Jesus requires all of us to do and challenges all of us to do quite often, and that is to walk by faith. Quite literally for them, to walk by faith. In other words, do the thing that you would do if you believe that what God says is true. Do the thing you would do if you really believed that what God was speaking to you was actually true. Even if you don't see that it's true, even if you don't feel that it's true, you begin to do the thing you would do if you believed. You walk by faith. And Jesus says, go, show yourselves to the priests. Take action. And though nothing is different for them yet, they do it. And so they go off, I don't know, maybe ringing their bells, headed back into town. And I love this line, as they went. As they went, as they acted on what Jesus said, though they didn't feel any different, though nothing had actually changed, as they went, something happened. Something happened for them, and they knew that it had happened. And here's where the story gets interesting. One of them, when he saw he was healed, came back. One of them came back. Let's call this one the returner. And as you can just kind of picture the scene, as they're all walking back into town to see the priest, you can imagine the 10 of them are talking, they're wondering out loud, like, are we really going to be cleansed? What is the priest going to say? They're making plans about what they're going to do first if they get a clean bill of health. And then something starts to happen. We don't know what that was, what gave them that indication. Maybe they can see their skin changing in front of their eyes. Maybe he begins to feel things in places that he hasn't felt them for a while. And somehow they all know that they are cleansed. And as 9 of them take off to find the priest, one of them stops. And he turns back. And look what he does. One of them, when he saw he was healed, he came back praising God in a loud voice. You could hear this guy from hundreds of yards away. He's so excited. And when he finally reached Jesus, he threw himself at Jesus' feet. He's just so grateful. He's so grateful. He's on the ground in front of Jesus saying, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And he was a Samaritan. And after he thanks Jesus, Jesus says something. He says something. He raises an important question. And Jesus asked, verse 17, "Were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? We're not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? And here's the tension. Here's the tension that many of us live with in our relationships regarding gratitude. And Jesus is pointing out there's something wrong with the picture. There's something missing here, that for only one of the 10 was the circle of gratitude closed. Where are the other 9? Where are the other 9? And it's almost like ingratitude or not expressing gratitude has created this unfinished loop, this open loop in the relationship. Where's the other 9? Where's the other 9? Has no one, he goes on to say, returned to give praise to God except this foreigner? And Luke, telling the story, has made sure to point out that the returner, is actually a Samaritan. And here we find there's this theme, there's this subplot very frequently in the stories of Jesus' life, where there are these people who are considered religious insiders. And there are always people who are considered or consider themselves religious insiders. These are the faithful. These are the ones who believe the right things and say the right things in the right way. They're the saved people. And then there are people who aren't. They're the outsiders. They don't believe the right things. They don't say and do all of the right things. And then comes an uncomfortable contradiction. And we all know it's true, that sometimes the outsiders, the so-called outsiders, behave better than the insiders. And you perhaps have noticed that. You've noticed that and you've thought, what's up with that? In fact, it is possible that has actually kept you at times from deciding to follow Jesus. And because it's like, I don't get it. I don't get religious people. And if I understand that tension. But I just want to say, if that's what's keeping you from following Jesus, you don't need to let that keep you from following Jesus, because Jesus pointed that out all the time. He talked about that all of the time. And here Jesus is drawing attention to this irony, making the point that the so-called outsider is actually really the hero of faith in the story. And Jesus is like, here's this guy who everyone would consider an outsider, and yet he is the one that's praising God and expressing gratitude. And then Jesus said to him, "Rise up and go. Your faith has made you well, the end. And now when we first hear this story, I think for all of us, when we first hear this story, our natural response is something like, wow, those other 9 were so ungrateful. I mean, only one was grateful. How could the other 9 be ungrateful? I mean, Jesus just gave them their lives back. He just gave them their families back. He gave them their jobs back. He gave them their futures back. It was like the best gift ever, and it wasn't even Christmas. And only one is a returner? Only one comes back and says, thank you? How could the others be so incredibly ungrateful? And here's what's interesting. The other 9, I think, are doing exactly what all of us do most every day of our lives. The other 9, they're just moving forward. They're moving forward, they're not looking back, and it's hard to blame them, right? I mean, suddenly they're thinking about their families. They're thinking about busting through the door of their homes and hugging their kids for the first time in who knows how long. They're thinking about getting back to their farms and getting back to work and worshiping in their community and sitting with old friends and talking into the evening. And their minds are just racing with what's next. I mean, that was awesome. Now what's next? And they're excited. And don't you think, and I'm going to make this part of the story up, but don't you think that if we could chase the 9 down, like, hey guys, wait. Hey, hold on, stop. Hey, guys, before you go see the priest, before you go running off to see your family, aren't you grateful that Jesus healed you? You know what I think they would say? I bet you know what they would say. They would say, well, yeah. Of course. We are so grateful. We can't wait to see our priests. We can't wait to see our families. We are feeling many grateful feelings. We are thinking many grateful thoughts. We are so grateful. Meanwhile, Jesus is back there with the one guy going, weren't there 10? Only one comes back, and the other 9 are so happy. They're high-fiving. They can't believe it's like best day ever. And Jesus is going, weren't there 10? Weren't there 10? Something's wrong. Something's missing. Something's unfinished. And they, the 9, I would assume, they have no earthly idea, because this is so hard to see in ourselves, that they have an unfinished loop of gratitude. And their problem is the problem I think we often have, and why it's so hard to see this in the mirror, because they felt grateful. They just didn't express it. They felt grateful, they just didn't express it. And here's what's going on in some of your relationships. You felt it. You felt it, you thought it, but you just aren't effectively or sufficiently expressing it. And as a result, there are some unseen deficits in some of your relationships. And maybe like many, you've even mentioned it to other people. Like you've told people at work about something cool about your spouse and what they did, or you told your roommate something great about something your parents did, or you've talked to your family about how grateful you are for your job, and you told somebody else, or you thought it, or you felt it, and you think you're grateful, but you have not effectively and sufficiently expressed it to them. And somewhere in your life, there are probably people standing around saying, weren't there 10? Didn't I do something good for people? Weren't there 10? And here's the principle. Here's the principle that I am wanting to connect with this week, and I hope you will connect with as well. And the principle is simply this: unexpressed gratitude communicates ingratitude. Unexpressed gratitude communicates ingratitude. Unexpressed gratitude might feel like real gratitude, but it communicates ingratitude, which is why it's so hard to see it in the mirror, because we feel like we're grateful. But what our unexpressed gratitude says to others is, you're ungrateful. You're ungrateful. You don't appreciate what you have. You don't appreciate their hard work. You don't appreciate what you've been given or what you've received. You don't notice, or you don't care, or you're taking it for granted. And we can all do that. We can all be like the 9, just moving forward. Hey, that was awesome. Moving forward to what's next. And if someone were to stop you and go, hey, wait, before you go on to what's next, aren't you grateful? You would go, well, yeah, of course I am. But when we don't adequately express gratitude, you know what it feels like to others? It feels like ingratitude. In fact, it often feels like rejection. It feels like the other person is unappreciated, unloved, unvalued, unnoticed, unwanted, perhaps even used, unexpressed gratitude communicates ingratitude, and ingratitude, this leads to a second point, cultivates entitlement. And there's another ugly word, right? Ingratitude cultivates entitlement. By not expressing the gratitude I feel or that I think in that moment, what happens is, and there's a lot of research on this, I fail to connect with it. I fail to connect with it deeply. That unexpressed gratitude dissipates very quickly. The shelf life of unexpressed gratitude is very short, and I'm just on to what's next. And over time, I can begin to operate from the position, well, you're supposed to do that. You're supposed to do that. Of course you did that because you're supposed to do that. And by the way, this goes into every single relationship we have. It goes from spouse to spouse, from parents to kids, and kids to parents, bosses to employees, and vice versa, family members to family members, friends to friends. You're supposed to do that. Of course you're doing that. You're the mom. You're the dad. You're my spouse. You're supposed to cook for me. You're supposed to clean for me. You're supposed to drive for me. You're supposed to provide for me. You're supposed to be a great parent. You're supposed to show up. You're supposed to be my cheerleader. Of course you did. You're supposed to. You're my employee. You're supposed to work through the night on a project if I need you to. You're my boss. You're supposed to give me a great job. You're my kid. You're supposed to. You're supposed to do what I say. You're supposed to respect me and treat me respectfully. You're supposed to. You're supposed to care. You're supposed to be generous with your life. You're supposed to go the extra mile. You're supposed to put yourself out there. You're supposed to. And when that happens, what happens is when we don't express the gratitude we feel, it becomes fleeting. It dissipates very quickly. And rather than becoming a grateful person, I can become an entitled person. And again, I didn't even see it happen. I don't see it happen. I don't notice the shift that takes place. And if someone were to stop me and say, wait a minute, John, aren't you grateful? I would probably say, well, yeah, of course, I guess I'm grateful. But in the absence of connecting with my gratitude and expressing it, I can start to feel and act rather entitled. Unexpressed gratitude communicates ingratitude. Ingratitude cultivates entitlement, and entitlement shrinks our hearts. Entitlement shrinks our hearts. Again, lots of research on this in psychology over the last few decades. Entitlement makes us less happy. Just straight up, makes us less happy, less generous, less compassionate, less sympathetic for what others are going through. It increases our discontentment and our envy and even our criticism of others, and it damages our relationships. It damages our relationships because it leaves people feeling unloved and unwanted and unnoticed and unappreciated, and it pushes other people's hearts out of the relationship because unexpressed gratitude feels like rejection. It feels like they're not wanted or appreciated, and over time, and by the way, we have all felt that in certain relationships in our lives. Ingratitude over time, entitlement over time drives others' hearts away, even if they physically stay. It will drive their hearts away from the relationship, even if they physically stay in the relationship. And the problem is you don't see it. And I don't see it. I don't sit up in my bed at night, or you don't sit up in your bed at night and say to yourself, oh my gosh, you know what the problem in my marriage is? Oh, I am so ungrateful. I'm just so ungrateful. You don't see it, and it's impossible actually to see that ingratitude and entitlement in ourselves. The bottom line, if it isn't expressed, it doesn't exist. If it isn't expressed, it really doesn't exist. Case in point, Jesus. Weren't there 10? Weren't there 10? Because unexpressed gratitude is the same as ingratitude. It communicates ingratitude, and over time, ingratitude cultivates entitlement, and it shrinks our hearts, and it drives others' hearts out of the relationship. But, and here's the good news, expressing gratitude grows our hearts. Now, notice what I did not say. I did not say gratitude grows our hearts, because we all feel grateful. It is expressing gratitude that actually grows our hearts. One of the most potent, powerful, hands-on things that we can actually do today, this week, to grow bigger hearts, hearts that are healthier and happier and fuller and freer and more joyful and more generous, more satisfied and more loving. One of the most potent things we can do to grow bigger hearts is to express the gratitude that we feel to say it or write it and share it with others. In fact, this week I was reflecting a little on this and my own struggle with this, on gratitude and thankfulness, and expressing it to God and others. And I began to think about a character who we meet in the Bible, in the New Testament, in the documents of the New Testament that we see very often. His name is Paul, or Paul of Tarsus, or the Apostle Paul. You may have heard of him before. And I began to flip through a number of letters that he wrote that are collected in something we call the New Testament in the Bible. And I noticed, and you can do this for yourself, and check this out for yourself, I noticed how many of those letters begin with something like this. This line is actually taken from his letter to the church in Philippi, and here's what he says at the very top of his letter. I thank my God every time I remember you. In all my prayers for all of you, I always pray with joy. I thank my God and I feel joy. And it's like Paul, as he thinks of these people that he knows, as he prays for them, he thinks about them. And as he thinks about them, he feels grateful for them. And then he expresses that gratitude. He connects that with that gratitude and expresses it to God. He's like, thank you, God. Thank you for these people in my life. Thank you for these relationships. Thank you for these friendships. Thank you for that person. Thank you for that church, for that community. Thank you for them. And in fact, studies, let's pause right there. Studies just showed that right there, just that, the very act of stopping in your tracks and identifying what or who you're grateful for and why, and then expressing it in some way, writing it down or saying it, that very act has a dramatically positive effect on your heart, on your inner experience of life, your thoughts, your feelings, your mindset. In fact, in some of these studies, I was perusing them again just in preparation for this, just reflecting on how many studies have been done over the last few decades on this, repeated again and again. The results are always the same. As people undergo these gratitude exercises over periods of weeks always, when they are compared to control groups who did not, they always test as feeling happier, more optimistic, more hopeful, more satisfied with their lives, less materialistic. They have fewer health issues. More energy. Come on now. They are more compassionate, more sensitive to other people. They're more likely to stop and help somebody in need. And they even reported getting more hours of quality sleep. Like, what? It's like gratitude is the wonder drug. I mean, seriously, if Pfizer could market gratitude in pill form, they would make billions. And we're giving it to you today for free. And Paul is thinking and praying about these friends of his, and he connects with those grateful feelings, and he expresses them to God, and he feels joy, but it doesn't stop there. He does something one step more that's huge. He expresses it to them as well, and he writes them a letter, and he says to them, I thank God for you. And then he gives specific content, and you should read the letter yourself and see what he says next. He gives specific content as to why. And here's why that's huge, because expressing gratitude to others actually multiplies gratitude. It multiplies it, it makes it bigger. In fact, saying it out loud increases your own gratitude, for one, on the one hand, because like, what do you feel when you're expressing genuine gratitude to another person? What do you feel? Well, you feel grateful. Like, you feel grateful all over again, but it not only increases your gratitude, it increases theirs as well. And again, I'll ask you, what do you feel when someone is expressing genuine, thoughtful gratitude to you? You feel grateful. You feel grateful, and it creates what Robert Emmons calls an upward spiral, or a positive feedback loop, as gratitude begets gratitude in the relationship. And that, my friends, is powerful and positive. Unexpressed gratitude communicates ingratitude. Ingratitude will ultimately cultivate entitlement. Entitlement shrinks our hearts, but expressing gratitude reverses it. Expressing gratitude grows our hearts. So I want to end with a question, and it's an important one. Who's coming to mind? Who's coming to mind as I'm talking about this? Someone that, yeah, you're grateful for them, but you don't know if you always express it, or you express it sufficiently. And unexpressed gratitude is experienced by other people as ingratitude, or worse, as rejection. And it drives their hearts out of the relationship, and often towards someone who does notice them and does appreciate them. Who are you grateful for that you may not say out loud very often? I know what some of you are thinking. Some of you are thinking this. You're thinking, well, yeah, but if I express my gratitude, they'll lose motivation. See, because, John, yeah, I'm kind of grateful for some things, but I'm not grateful for everything, and they got a lot of work to do. And if I thank him for one thing, he'll think I'm happy about everything. And as long as they know how unsatisfied and discontent I am with them, they'll try harder. But the moment I start to express all of this gratitude, they're going to take their foot off the gas. I just know it. I know what you're thinking. I get it. And I just want to say, I understand. Two quick things. First of all, how's that working for you? And second of all, newsflash. Feeling unnoticed and unappreciated and taken for granted does not motivate someone over time to try harder. It does not motivate them to try harder. It has the opposite effect. It drives their hearts away even if they physically stay. So come on. Who's coming to mind? Who's coming to mind? And what does it look like for you to take time this week or even today, even right now, if you're watching before you move on to another thing and you stop this at the end, to right now, say it. Maybe to the people you're with right now, to express it, to write it, to say thank you, and then fill in the blank. Thank you, and then fill in the blank. I know you're my parent, and like you provided for me and cooked for me and cleaned for me and paid for me, paid everything. You did it every day. But thank you. Thank you. I know you're my spouse and you take care of all these things and you make it look easy. And sometimes I can actually start to think that it must be easy, but thank you. Thank you. I know you're my coworker, you're my employee, you're just doing your job. I know you're doing your job, but thank you for that. Thank you. I know you're my family, your sister, your brother, you're my family, like you're supposed to be there. Can I just say thank you for being there? Thank you. I notice, I see it, I feel it, and I'm grateful. Who do you need to say that to? Who needs to hear that from you? See, the call of this passage is that we would be a returner, that we would become returners. And you know what a returner is? A returner is someone who goes back to those who enabled them to move forward. It's somebody who goes back to those who in some way or another had enabled them to move forward. And in your life and in my life, there are dozens of people who invested in us, believed in us, taught us, supported, accepted, comforted, encouraged, served, paid for, loved, gave to, modeled to us, provided jobs for us. And as self-made and autonomous as we would all like to think that we are, we all know this. Without a lot of other people and their help, we would not have been able to move forward. And that was the case with the 10. Without Jesus, none of them would have moved forward with their lives, but only one was a returner. Really, the point of the story is be that guy. Be the returner. Make it your habit of going back, closing the loop, expressing genuine gratitude for what you have noticed and what you have received. And did you know that quite possibly making a habit out of effectively and sufficiently expressing gratitude might be the thing that saves a relationship? That saves that relationship. It might be the thing that breaks through a relationship. It just might be the thing that pulls another person's heart back into a relationship because we are drawn to being noticed and accepted and appreciated, and we are repelled from going unnoticed and unvalued. And it's impossible to see in the mirror. It's impossible to see in the mirror. We feel so grateful. The best way to avoid becoming an ungrateful, entitled, shriveled-hearted person, and one of the most proven and practical ways to grow our hearts this Christmas is to cultivate the habit of expressing gratitude. So who do you need to do this with? Who needs to hear that from you? And who will you do it for before this day is over? Let me close this in prayer. Heavenly Father, we always want to be taking the opportunity to close the loop with you and just say thank you. Thank you for your grace. Thank you that you loved this world so much that you gave your Son so that we could have eternal life with you. Thank you. And thank you that you so often have a way of putting your finger on areas of our lives and hearts where we can grow and change and become more human, more like you, more like who you created us to be. And so I pray that you'll guide each one of us as people come to mind today, I pray that none of us would disregard this moment that we have to lean into a relationship, to express the gratitude we feel. And I pray that for some of us, your healing presence would combine with that act of faith, and that you just might heal and restore some relationships that have become tense or even broken during this season. And I pray that for all of us. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, hey, before you sign off really quick, I just want to ask you, please don't forget to fill out that Connect card. Scott was mentioning it earlier. Take a moment, fill out the Connect card on your app. If you've got your phone out, you're following along with the message. Or you can, if you're on your computer, you can fill it out on our website, on our watch page. Just click the link that looks like that. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know how we can be serving you, working with you while you are on your app or the website. Giving is, of course, always super easy these days. And your generosity, here's what's beautiful about this. Your generosity will actually become a part of our collective generosity as we reach out to families through this Rack Your Neighbor thing. And again, if you can think of anyone, and maybe you're thinking, well, I don't know if they need a whole lot of financial help right now. This isn't necessarily even about desperate need. This could just be someone just needs some kindness. They've been through some hard stuff. And let's love on them. Let's be the presence of Jesus that just lifts them up through acts of generosity and kindness. So let us know who they are. Click the button on your app, on your phone, and fill that out. Take a moment on our website, click the link, and let us know who we can come alongside you with and just serve and love on. And by the way, as I sign off, just remember our women's Christmas experience called The Nativity is coming up on Sunday the 6th. If you were watching this on the weekend, there is still time. Please come out and join us. And then finally, come back next week for a look at one of the most famous Christmas movies of all, as God on Film Christmas Edition continues with part 2. Thanks again for joining us today.